There are spirits everywhere, watching, waiting, seeking that opportune time to reveal themselves like no other. They fill our worlds with so much.
Seriously? You didn't just do that. You farted on the promo? What's wrong with you? I thought you were a professional. Go away. I got it. Hey everybody, it's Brian Bowden, host of Nobo Boomy, where we explore deep inside the Goblin universe. We have an amazing show that covers the paranormal, conspiracies, music, art, entertainment, trending topics, and so much more. Please join us by subscribing to the show on Podbean at InsideTheGoblinUniverse.podbean.com, on iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, and everywhere you find podcasts. It's an informative, fun, and overall entertaining good time, and we'll keep the gas to ourselves. Why don't you burp next time? Someone get me Brian Anderson.
Welcome to Paranormal Heart, a place where people can talk about their paranormal experiences. With your host, Kat Ward, along with a special segment, Oddities with Jon Malliard.
Welcome to October's episode of Paranormal Heart, your monthly paranormal podcast. New episodes are released the last Sunday of each month at 6 p.m. Eastern. You can find us on Podbean, YouTube, Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify, Paranormal Radio, SparkRadioNet.work, as well as IamDarkWaters.com each Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern. As always, don't forget to show the love and hit subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube, or follow us on Podbean, or whatever platform you are using. If you have had paranormal experiences you'd like to share, or have topics or guests to suggest, just drop me an email at paranormalheart13@gmail.com. Folks, I can't believe it's October already, and if it's October, you know what that means. It's Halloween. Anyone who's into the paranormal waits all year for this. It's our time of year to embrace all things creepy. And when I start seeing Halloween things next to the back-to-school supplies in the stores, I don't know about you, but I get so excited. And for this Halloween episode, I have a great guest. But before I get to my next guest, here's Jon Malliard with this month's Oddities. Let's see what weird things Jon has found for us this month. Over to you, Jon.
Hey, oddballs. Welcome to this month's Oddities. Strange facts about an odd world that are very, very true. Hey, oddballs, I got some bad news for you. It's true. You're gonna die. So, to cheer you up, I found some very strange stories about death to talk about this month as our Oddities. Admiral George Goncalves shocked his loved ones when he showed up very much alive to his own funeral. The 59-year-old Brazilian bricklayer had spent the night drinking with friends at a truck stop and didn't know he was, quote-unquote, dead until his funeral had already begun. During the night, he'd been misidentified as the victim of a car crash, and in keeping with Brazilian tradition, the body was buried the next day. People are afraid to look for very long when they identify bodies, police explained regarding the badly disfigured corpse, and he said, "My two uncles and I had doubts about the identification, but my aunt and 4 of Adamir's friends said it was him. The crash victim was later correctly identified and buried by his own family. Thank God." Do you want ghosts? Because this is how we get ghosts. Moving on. When Levan's wife died in 2003, the 55-year-old Vietnamese man was so heartbroken that he took to sleeping on her grave. After a year and a half, he decided to dig a tunnel so he can get closer to her. But that still wasn't close enough, so Van dug up his wife's deceased God. He dug her up, filled it, oh God, out with a clay to make her look more lifelike. Yeah, like, nothing makes her look better than to fill her with dirt. And put her in his bed so he can sleep beside her. Oh God, can you imagine the smell? 5 years later, she was still there, and both Van and his son hugged her every night before going to sleep. Local authorities found out about the morbid arrangement and told Van to rebury her, citing sanitation laws. Sadly, he agreed. I'm not like normal people, admitted Van. No, you definitely are not. And dude, hate to tell you, but your wife, totally dead in the sack. Moving on again. Till death do us part, James and Lolly Becklin had been happily married for 59 years. On the morning of December 12th, 2009, they were sitting together in their Florida nursing home watching television when Lolly, matter-of-fact, told an aide, I'm going to die today. The aide returned to her a short while later and found that Lolly had stopped breathing. Moments later, James, 79, also died of natural causes. They didn't like to go anywhere alone, their daughter said. And even from the great beyond, I think that story is kind of cute. It's probably not as moving as that Up movie. I have to think the Up movie is very depressing, but also very cute. Anyway, that was your oddities for this month. Guys, I hope you really enjoyed it. Back to you, Kat.
My next guest has had a most fascinating career in the paranormal. She has experienced pretty much all aspects when it comes to the weird and frightful. She's an international public figure, television personality on several paranormal shows, researcher, and Gothic collector. She has also helped so many people who have had experiences with the more intense paranormal cases that would make the most seasoned investigators shudder. I am honored to introduce to you Michelle Desrochers. Hey, Michelle, welcome to Paranormal Heart.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited that you agreed to be on the show, and I know that there's all kinds of my listeners will be excited to hear you.
Well, I'm happy to hear that. I'll try to make it as entertaining as possible.
Now, unless people have been living in a cave or under a rock, I'm sure pretty much everyone's heard about you, but just in case there's that one person, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into some questions?
Well, shout out to the one person. Thank you, Rochelle.
She'll be tickled to hear that.
Most people will know me from probably the most recent television shows, Paranormal Survivor, Haunted Case Files, My Worst Nightmare. Realistically, I've been researching and filming for the last 17 years. My research company and media company is Canada's Most Haunted. So we are a fully fledged insured company, and we do specialize in research and helping people. And we do have a spin-off of that for all of our media.
Nice. So like I said, I'm sure everyone's pretty much heard of you, but you never know.
Well, I'm sure, there are people out there who live in caves and stuff. I'm just kidding. No, true. Well, everybody knows me, but, kudos to those that do.
So I know you were raised in what you refer to as a paranormal family. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I've basically, from the time I was very little, have been able to see dead people, so to speak. I've had multitude of experiences going back to, I remember being 3 and 4 years old and just seeing people in the family. And whereas most people would just shrug that off, I was very fortunate that my family was very encouraging of it. Well, at least my mother was. My father was just sort of like, not doing that. But my mom was like, oh, that's nice, dear. But she would also show me photographs of family members without leading me and just saying, oh, and leave them out. And I'd say, oh, I saw this person, or I know who this person is. And it was never discouraged. If I had an imaginary friend, it was pretty much not so imaginary. And it was never, I was never made to feel silly about it. So my mother's, ironically, both sides of my family are very intuitive. And like I said, my father just wouldn't go there. But my mother's family were all very vocal about it. So I could go to any one of my aunts or my grandfather, who taught me so much before he passed away, and still does from the spirit realm. He has led me down so many paths that have just been unbelievable, you know, and this is, of course, in his afterlife. So I've been very, very fortunate that way.
You most certainly were, because there's a lot of children growing up who'll see things like that and they can't tell their parents, or the parents say, you know, it's your imagination, your imaginary friend, and they really don't have the support.
They don't have the support, and it's sad because most who do know me do know that I work primarily in malevolent hauntings or alleged demonic attachments and infestations. And a lot of these situations occur because children are targeted. They have a beautiful light about them, and entities are attracted to them. And, you know, all it takes is that parent to say, you're being silly. Don't be ridiculous. You're being stupid. I mean, these are the things that I've had children tell me that their parents have said to them or their caregivers have said to them. So they shut down and they won't talk about it. And the next thing you know, they are either being tricked into thinking they're dealing with a nice little friend, or they're being bullied by an entity that's scaring them. And it keeps them silent, and it forces them into invitations. And these things come in, and then they start wreaking havoc. And I've talked to adults who've had this happen to them as children. And they have taken this attachment through adulthood. It's very sad.
Yeah, it's if they could just have more encouragement from family and friends. The paranormal is a lot more acceptable now as it was, you know, compared to even 10 years ago. But it still is kind of a little bit of a taboo. People still are a little hesitant to talk about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not for everybody. And some people are very, you know, frightened of the thought of seeing an apparition. You know, even a friendly one. It's just not for everyone. But I always try to advise people that I'm working with when it comes to their children, because I've worked with many children, and it's just essentially to not discourage them. It's like, you don't have to lead them, but don't mislead them either. Just let them talk. They need to be able to come to you if they're not feeling safe or if they're feeling confused. Just try to give the advice, whether you believe in it or not. Something is making them believe it. Exactly. So don't shut them down, or you're all going to end up in trouble, potentially.
Yeah, because they're experiencing something that's very real to them.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
So do you remember what your first encounter was, and were you traumatized by it, or did you deal with it relatively, you know, did you have the support as well?
Fortunately for me, the encounter that I remember being the first, and maybe there were others that I, you know, spoke to my mom about, but the one I vividly remember was Christmas at my grandparents' house. I always remember Christmas at my grandparents' house. It was just always just special, you know. And I was probably about 4 years old, and I remember walking into their living room and seeing a man standing there in a suit, in a black suit, and his hair was sort of slicked back, and he just looked over and smiled. And I remember smiling, and I come running out of the living room, and my mother sees me. She goes, "Oh," she says, "you know, what are you all smiles about?" And I said, the man in the living room. And she goes, "Oh," she goes, "was there a man in the living room?" I said, "Yeah." And she says, "Oh," and she said, "Well," she goes, "maybe, you know, maybe we can find a picture or something, you know," because my grandparents had photos all over the walls. And she just kind of said, "You know, maybe just walk around." She goes, "Was it anybody over here?" And I looked and looked and looked and looked. And I found my grandfather's brother, who had been the last one to pass away within like probably 6 months. So, you know, there he was. And my grandfather just smiled and said, "Yeah." He said, "You know, he comes here for all the holidays." So I'm like, "Oh, okay, cool." You know,
That's amazing.
being a kid going, "That's all right." So I really didn't fear it. It was just very, very comforting.
I love how your mother didn't make a big deal out of it. And she just said, "Oh, let's go look at some photos and see, you know, do you recognize anyone?" I really like that. And I think if children grow up that way, they grow up to be more of well-rounded adults later on.
I agree. You see, she didn't lead me. She didn't say you're silly. She just says, "Oh, well, okay." Because you think she thinks logically, well, what would a spirit be doing here? It is Christmas. And the way she was raised, basically, was you don't fear things like that. You know, they're all very intuitive. My grandfather and his family and mother and grandparents, I mean, they were all through the roof intuitive. Yeah. So, you know, they weren't raised to fear it. she wasn't raised to fear it, and didn't discourage it. She just kind of let me do my thing. She goes, oh, well, is it anybody you see? And I looked and I looked and I looked, and, and I went, yes, that man right there, and I thought, wow, that was very nice. It just showed me. And I kept that in the back of my mind, how spirits do not, they're not completely gone from your life. Mm-hmm. They really do participate in the special moments. They don't really wander too far. He wasn't grounded. He was, full color, and he was smiling, and it was great to see.
Do you still see him today?
I do not. No, but that house has been long gone, and my grandfather's been long gone. He was very close to my grandfather. So I imagine when my grandfather passed away, I started seeing people in visitation more than anything. He used to come in visitation a lot in dreams. And oddly enough, whenever somebody would pass away, whether it was a sibling of his or a child of his, like my aunts or uncles, whenever the next visitation would take place, that individual would be added to it. And it was odd because I remember my grandmother talking about this type of house she always wanted, her little dream house. And she died like 28 years or so after my grandfather. And whenever I would see my grandfather, they would be in the living room of the old house. But yet when they were on the exterior, it was this new house, and it was painted this really light yellow. And even if I had pets die, I would see my pets running around there. And then again, every addition would be there, either gardening or walking around and just smiling, and which it just validated to me that everyone was together and they were building this home, this location, this dream home for my grandmother. And
That's
oddly
amazing.
enough, when my grandmother died, I don't really think she wanted anything to do with my grandfather for a little while. So, 'cause I have never seen her in a visitation dream at that house.
Oh, that's strange.
Yeah, she was mad at him. So,
Maybe.
my grandmother could hold a grudge, man.
Yes, women can carry it.
Oh, yeah, I'm pretty much thinking so. But it's very comforting. They really did their best to reach out. And my grandfather has reached out many, many times. So it's awesome.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I hear a lot of people say that it seems to be mainly females in the family who have these abilities, and not too many men. And I personally feel that perhaps that could be because women, we talk more about what's going on with us, and men are a little bit more closed about their emotions and whatnot. What are your thoughts on that?
I have mixed thoughts about that, really, because I know so many gifted individuals, both male and female. Women are emotional creatures. We think with the right side of the brain, which is emotion and intuition and caring. And, when we go through puberty, especially, we have strong enough emotions when we go through physical changes and emotional changes that we can create our own poltergeist. And we do it again at menopause, So we're very tuned in, very in touch. But I'll tell you, my grandfather, he was a guy's guy all the way through and through. And he was super intuitive. And his oldest son, the same. He seemed to take it one step farther, and then I took it one step farther. And, they were very pleased with that. But, I don't know. I don't know if I completely agree with that, just because of the amount of gifted people throughout the world that I'm proud to be affiliated with from, both sides of the fence, so to speak.
This is going to sound like a strange question, but do you get weather headaches?
All the time.
I find I've been doing a little bit of research on that. There seems to be a correlation with people who have sensitivities with the paranormal, and they're very, very sensitive to the weather change.
I think it's being sensitive to energy on average.
Yeah.
Because boy, when that changes, everything, like I find my whole environment feels different when the pressure outside changes. I feel it in my head. I'll even feel it again, living in a haunted house. I really feel them around a little bit more, and thunderstorms and such. electrical storms, especially. Oh my gosh,
Mm-hmm.
things crazy in here. It just amps everybody up, or in the winter, the same. So much static in the air, just easy for them to move around in, I guess. But
Maybe.
the house is really active. So, yeah.
Now, I know I did a little bit of research on infrasound the past few years, and the reason why animals pretty much tell us that. Sorry, I had to move the cat out of the way. She wants to walk on the desk.
Speaking of.
Yeah. I found that with the little bit of research I've done on infrasound, earthquakes, storms, especially electrical storms, right before it's being led by infrasound, and that's what animals are picking up on. And I feel that perhaps us sensitives are just sensitive to infrasound as well, but it's still energy.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's so much that we don't realize, about our environment. So much of it is about frequency. And I find, I'll back up a minute. I end up with some very interesting clients, many who I've gone on to call my friends, because you've just worked so closely with people. I can't just look at somebody as a client unless they completely lose touch, And I have found over the last probably year or so, many months, year and such, I've met some very interesting people who do very interesting things. And one of these people has a knack for working with planetary frequencies, and he can do incredible things. And he explained to me that even animals such as, mammals, especially like whales, how they're tuned into frequencies. He says, yes. When I do work on frequencies, he goes, I can literally connect to these animals. And he goes, and sometimes there are other beings, out there that mess with the Earth's frequencies, and it messes with us. So I think frequency on average, we have to learn how to ground, like keep us focused, so we don't get affected by all of these little things around us that change, such as, pressure headaches, like when the pressure changes, or when the moon goes full, or, just little things that we're all so, we're so capable and vulnerable in so many ways. Like as strong as human beings can be, we really are very vulnerable to so much.
We sure are. The human body is just so fascinating, what it can handle and what it's so sensitive to.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. But because, you look at things like, we don't know what I'm going to go out there. We don't know what our governments are up to. And
do they know what they're up to?
Yeah, put fluoride in our water and everything, buggers.
Yeah.
Mess with our pineal gland, keep us
5G
silly.
Towers.
Yeah, exactly. 5G right there. There's a whole frequency thing that's going to mess us up. Yep. But it's just one example, So I think learning how to ground and stay focused and keep your energy grounded would be a definite plus. At least it is for me, and I find it helps a lot. Grounding.
So how, because you deal with a lot more intense cases than I do, cases that I don't even want to look at or even consider. So how do you deal with being sensitive to all these various energies and entities? Are there coping mechanisms or anything that you have to do?
At first, there were definitely coping mechanisms. Again, grounding, forms of protection. I find that as time went on, I just had a better understanding of it. And I always remembered my grandfather saying to me, you have to have a healthy respect for everything. Everything has its place, and we don't really have a complete understanding of what everything is. So, you can't go in there and just assume what works here is going to work here. You have to pay attention. And if you show fear, you can feel fear, but if you show fear, you're essentially going to just draw attention to yourself. And it's true, you do. I had an attachment for many, many years. So when I come into a situation, I speak from experience. I'm not just somebody who's just like, okay, hey, I read a few books and I wanted to start a team or join a team. And I really came at it from a perspective of what I went through. And there wasn't internet back then, showing my age a little bit. But, so I had to do it the old fashioned way, go to a library and do some research. And it's not like there was a lot on the matter back then. There's not a whole lot. So for me, the closest I could get was, a book on witchcraft, which was just about saging, protecting yourself by saging and cleansing your space and things like that. And how it was important, for your mindset to be strong. And it's something that worked for me, until I discovered, the book, The Demonologist by Lorraine Warren. I'm like, see, these people know what the hell is going on right here. So,
yeah.
That was that for me after that.
I read that book too. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I loved it. But you know what? It made me realize how important mindset really was. And I understood what my grandfather meant. Because even when we can clear people, it's still a matter of working with them with their mindset, because it will be their biggest enemy in the end. Not every little sound is going to be something scary and malevolent. Not every little thing they see from the corner of their eye is going to be something to worry about. When you're doing a cleansing, because I like them to kind of do some maintenance, I teach them how to do grounding. I said, it's important. Things just won't latch on as easily because you'll be more focused, but I try to teach them that it's important for them to put power behind the words that they use, whatever gives them comfort and gives them strength while they're cleansing their space, to put power behind the intention of the clearing or of the cleansing. It's really important because it gives them that control. And that's what worked for me. It's mindset. I can go in, and I'm very unorthodox in how I do things. I don't do traditional investigations. Not that I can't, but why am I going to go communicate with something that people want out? They don't care why it's there. It's terrorizing them. I'm not going to go. But it's not that I'm not walking around, with an audio recorder or a video recorder, or it's not that those things aren't happening. But I get loads of stuff just with things they don't like to be ignored. So if I'm sitting there speaking with the homeowner, things are trying to draw my attention, and I've got growling coming through the audio recorders and hissing and name calling. And I'm like, okay, see, that's what I'm looking for. And I'm doing it without inviting communication, which is important for them because I get to go home and they get left behind.
Yeah.
And then you have something saying, well, you wanted to talk to me half an hour ago. I'm not done. And then it escalates, so no, I'm not interested in doing that. I've been doing this a long time. I have a pretty good idea of what I'm looking for and what I have to do. And that's the way it goes.
I find a lot of times I've told clients in the past, if they're mothers, I'll say, use your mom voice to say that they're not to be in that home anymore, because you're going to have a little bit more of fierceness behind it. And you're going to put your foot down, say, not today, like you need to leave. So I said, if you use your mom voice, then it's going to have a little bit more power behind it. At least that's how I feel.
Well, it's true. You're not wrong. It's giving them whatever it takes to give them or make them feel like they're in control.
Yep.
Sometimes the act of smudging, for example, is a way of making them feel like I'm doing something, I'm accomplishing something, I'm taking my space back. I have a long waiting list for people who want me in person. Really. I always prioritize children. If children are involved, I can go. But I've seen people that I've worked with behind the scenes. I'll say, this is what I need you to do until I can get there. By the time I get there, they've cleared their own homes.
Nice.
Like, it's pretty interesting. People are strong, but they're made to feel vulnerable by some of these entities or spirits. And you feel vulnerable. You don't know how to protect yourself. Sometimes all it takes is just being taught what to do. And then you can do it.
Yep. Agreed. Sometimes just having, like you said, if somebody thinks that they can't do it, sometimes just having someone like yourself teach them the correct methods and making them feel like empowering them.
Exactly. It's all about empowerment. And it's also making people realize that acknowledgement is empowerment. So while I'm empowering them, the more they acknowledge what's going on, the more they're empowering this thing or spirit individual in their space. Everybody seems to think that, oh no, the Ouija board gets the bad rap. Let me tell you something. It's not just the Ouija boards. With modern day technology, it's phone apps, it's pendulums, it's ghost boxes. Any form of communication is an invitation. I say it all the time. So people have to really be careful what they're going out and doing if they're not taking precautions to protect themselves. Especially people just getting started. I've done cases, my gosh, where people go to these huge haunted locations, like really crazy haunted locations, and they come back with something. And I'm like, okay, well, you obviously, I don't know if they're not maybe teaching people. Not everybody looks at it as it's our job to help you protect yourself while you're here. You want to come on a ghost tour or you want to come and investigate, here's the location we're providing. But I think it would be really awesome if people could just say, look, this is a really crazy place. Things have gone home with people. You should take precautions to maybe protect yourself or ground yourself, and maybe have someone there to do a quick run through with people. Because things come in and you have no idea. Sometimes it could be 6 months down the road and you're thinking, what is going on? There's something in here. Right? They have time on their side. They don't have to just amp up the second they cross the threshold. Yeah.
You kind of read my mind for my next question.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right. Just wondering, what advice would you have for people who some refer to as armchair investigators? And by that, I mean the people who watch the television shows and think, hey, I can do that. And they don't really know about the dangers. What advice do you have for them?
Oh man, educate yourself. I get messages from people saying, yeah, I think it's time I get into paranormal. What advice do you have for me? I'm like, oh man, you think it's time? Just like that. All right. Well,
you just woke up.
I know it's not as simple as that. First off, what you see on television, you're getting an hour, and even from the shows that I've done, you're crunching a few hours of filming into literally 10 minutes, if you're lucky, a little bit more. There's so much that goes on during a production of these shows that you're watching. You're looking at the best stuff that was captured, maybe over 12 to 15 hour investigation, or sometimes longer, all crammed up into an hour. Take away all the commercials. Yeah, maybe you have 40 minutes. So there's a lot more to it. But if you really, really want to get out there and get started, then go to a controlled environment. Go on a ghost tour. They have them all over the world. Go to a haunted location. Go to a para convention. Because a lot of these paranormal conventions will have, they'll have an investigation after the fact that people can participate in, and usually have a really interesting location to go to. And you usually do it with people who have experience, and you are with other people who are like-minded. It's a controlled environment. At least you can be taught how to use equipment. You can ask questions. You can take photos. And like I said, it would be nice if some people do talk a little bit about how to protect yourself, ground yourself, whatever. So things just don't latch on so easily. But if you find after something like that, you're still really interested, then don't stop learning. But just don't think everything you read online is accurate. Not everything online is accurate. Not everything on YouTube is accurate. You might have to really start delving a little bit, you can online maybe find an author or someone who's very versed. You may have a book out there that you can get in and pick up a book and read it, and just never stop learning. I make a point of learning one new thing every single day. Most of the time it's more, but I don't let one day go by where I haven't learned something.
Yeah. I used to A few years ago, we started hearing about people giving classes on paranormal investigating. And at first, I used to kind of make fun of that. And then I started thinking, that's really a good idea, because they're going to be, hopefully, they're qualified people teaching these classes, but they're going to show them the proper way and actually know how to use the equipment and know, like for the FLIR, for example, when I first got my FLIR, I went around everything and I was touching things, my dog's back, and I would have the handprint for a good 5 minutes, even on her back, the wall, trees, furniture, trying to figure out, okay, I'm getting something, but why? So for example, for the FLIR, if I walk ahead of one of my team members and I happen to touch the wall, they don't know I was there, and they come with the FLIR and they see a handprint. They're like, oh, hey, we got something. No, that was just me that walked by. So learn your equipment and what it can and cannot do. And just because you're getting a reading doesn't mean that you have something. You have to delve a little further. So I really like the idea of these classes now.
Yes. But again, you have to do your homework, because everybody has a class. Really do your homework. How long has someone been doing something? Mm-hmm. How versatile is the class? What does it cover?
What are the credentials of the teachers?
Well, yeah. I mean, there are people out there who charge a ridiculous amount of money and say, well, now you're certified in this. Well, there's not necessarily any true certification for that. No. You have to put it forth, as a way of saying, look, if this is just take what you can out of it. This is what this individual is able to share with you, and keep expanding on it, because people are a wealth of information. It's not like you have to be in the industry a million years to do it. You can be in the industry for a handful of years, and everybody learns at a different rate. Yep. And everybody has their own thoughts, but you have to understand that it's one person's perception. It's all about perception. We all perceive things differently. We all do things differently. We see things differently. We experience things differently, right? Mm-hmm. It's not just like, well, because this is the way it is. This doesn't mean that's the way it is at all, actually.
Yep.
So
perception is huge. I've used the example before. People think there's something demonic in their house, but it just winds up being, like, if you get a team to go in, it's just some entities getting really frustrated trying to communicate with them. They think it's demonic because things are flying off the shelf or whatever, but it might not necessarily be something malevolent. It's just something's really frustrating trying to get your attention. They know that, if you just paid attention, that perhaps you could talk with them. So it's all perception.
Yeah. It is. And I think, again, it gets difficult even with myself, because I do work primarily in these type of hauntings. And, I try to tell people, no, it's not always this. Sometimes it is just a really frustrated spirit. Sometimes there's nothing. Sometimes I am dealing, with people who really hardcore cases. I do have to ask a hard question and ask for maybe a psychological assessment, history, of mental health, things like that. And it's not to be mean and rude. It's just because there is a very fine line as to how the brain works and how we perceive things. And sometimes, you do think you're hearing something that's maybe not really there. But then again, there's just been an article recently released by, I wish I could remember this psychiatrist's name, but he basically came forth and said, I think some of us have been getting this wrong, because we've been diagnosing schizophrenia when we should have been diagnosing demonic attachments. I almost fell off my chair. I'm like, what? Wow. This is amazing. So I think it's hit and miss. If you have one person, for example, in the household experiencing something, and, you don't have any of the other conditions that a lot of these demonic attachments or hauntings would have, then you have to think, okay, well, there's something centered just around this individual and nobody else is experiencing anything. And that's when you might have to say, well, would you mind having an assessment, or a second opinion? And I usually require permission, from whichever physician they're working with. Most will give it, no problem, as long as, I don't try to discourage going off medication, things like that. And sometimes they are misdiagnosed. Sometimes there is nothing. Sometimes it really is something in the house. But honestly, an aggravated spirit can cause a lot of upset in the space, and they can go around making you think you're crazy. You're always, knocking on the walls or, knocking on the tables or, knocking things over. And a lot of times hauntings can cease just by explaining to the spirit individual that I'm not capable of hearing you or seeing you. I'm not being rude. I don't hear you or see you, and I'm sorry for that. But you passed on, and you should look to the light because you have family waiting, or wherever, the light or wherever it is you want to say, please look for your family. They're waiting. You just have to look behind you or above you, and because if they don't realize that they're passed on and they're just trying to communicate, they must think people are just rude as crap.
Right. Yeah.
Like you're rude. I'm sitting in this chair. You just wander in. I'm saying hello. You don't acknowledge me, and they get frustrated. And I can completely understand that.
Or some investigators that'll go in and, it could be grandma that's in the house and she's not malevolent. Yep. And they just walk into the house, not being respectful, saying, who are you? What are you doing here? Almost like I use the example. I'll walk into your house, Michelle, and say, hey, Michelle, is this your house? How long have you been here? Instead of walking in and saying, hey, I'm Kat. How are you? How long have you been?
Exactly.
Be respectful.
I love the whole show yourself. I demand you to show yourself. Yeah. You just want to cuff them upside the head. How's that? Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Was that good?
Again, that's an invitation. Who are you to invite and make an invitation to somebody else's space? Mm-hmm. Who are you? Some researchers go in and they just start just going off like that. It's like, who are you to make an invitation to someone else's house and then leave? Mm-hmm. I think we need to show more due diligence as researchers. And even when I teach people how to do voice recordings, for example, if you have a spirit who doesn't realize they've passed on and you're like, is there anybody here? The guy standing in front of you, look at you going, I'm going to have fun with you because you're an idiot. You don't even know I'm standing right in front of you. So I try to teach people, look at the environment. This is different, of course, for mediums who don't want to see photographs. But if you're a researcher and you're going in to do EVPs, look at the photographs, look at the environment, and try to get a feel for what maybe the spirit is sensing, and then ask questions based on that. If you're in a historical location, ask productive historical questions. Do you know what year it is? Do you realize, they may not realize that they've passed on. Yep. So you might want to suggest, well, you may not realize this, but, you have passed on. What is the last year you remember? Things like this, right? Because otherwise you go in there, anybody here? And they're standing there. You may as well just bend over and let them give you a kick in the rump because that's just pretty much how it could possibly go down,
'Cause, like you said, they might not know they're dead. And hey, someone's in my house, so that's why they're angry. Yeah. You're in my house.
Intruder alert.
Yeah, right.
So exactly. So honestly, I think sometimes this is where, when you talk about armchair investigators, where if you don't properly educate yourself, you get it wrong. What to do and what not to do, in a paranormal investigation. And, and a lot of people also don't realize that, again, you film for 15 hours and you come out with 40 minutes of pretty okay stuff or really amazing stuff. But there's a lot of time spent there. You be prepared to spend a lot of time at a location and not get anything in hopes of maybe at least getting one thing. Yep. But don't make it about the evidence. That's got to be one of the worst things that you see, on television. You mind you, I like some of the newer stuff that's coming out. They care about the family.
Yes.
They want to help the family. It's not about what they're going to come out of it with. It's like I always say, if somebody calls me and says, I really need your help, I don't look at it and say, well, you're lucky I'm here. I look at it as, thank you for trusting me. Thank you for entrusting yourself and your family to me. Thank you. I take it very seriously. It's an honor, a real privilege to have someone put so much faith in you to just take the load off, even for just a little while. Mm-hmm. just so they can breathe easy and realize somebody's got me. They're not going to let me fall. I'm okay now.
Yep.
That's how it has to be.
Like you said, they trust you. You're going into their home.
Yes. Yes. They're exposing themselves to you. Literally, I mean, not literally, but well, yeah. I mean, they're maybe they're deep, dark secrets,
That's a different kind of investigation.
I know. But nobody wants to admit, that, or very few people want to admit that I'm scared. I've gone into places, big burly guys, and it takes them a while, but they'll finally sit and look at me because, it's usually the spouse, the wife, like, oh my God, this is going on. I'm terrified. The kids are terrified. And dad sits in the background going, yeah, I'm cool. I'm all right with it. I'm just appeasing them, but after a while they relax and they'll say, you know what? It's frustrating for me because it's the one thing I can't protect them from. Yeah, it takes a lot to expose in that way to someone and admit things like that. And, admit you feel vulnerable yourself. It's huge. It's really huge for these types of hauntings. It really is.
I find the big burly men, you can see, excuse me, in their body language and in their eyes that they're really not okay.
No, it's true. It's true. It's sad. I don't think people realize, the intensity of some of these types of infestations or hauntings. I've had people just cry and break down, and I've had people grab me at the door and fall to their knees. I've had people hug me and not let me go, and just like hold on to me the whole time I'm there. I'm just like, oh my goodness, okay, I understand. And I understand. I've been there. And I'm there for them. I've been in situations where I'm interviewing a family and I've got chaos going on at the other end of the house. Like I hear knocking and banging and walking and the family's just staring at me, and I'll just send one of my researchers. They know I don't even have to open my mouth. Like my team knows exactly what to do. My eyes don't leave the family. I just sit there very calmly and I'm like, it's fine. And my researchers go off and see what the issue is. And I don't leave it. Things trying to take me away from the family just shows to the family, see, it's not about you.
Yeah.
See, we can make them leave. No, it doesn't work that way. I never leave the family.
That's great. They must have such relief when that happens.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. This is what I think. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are researchers out there who are, they want to investigate the public places. They want to investigate, to get the evidence, to get a better understanding of that. And that's 100%. I've been there. I've done it. I still love going on public investigations. I get invited to many. I'm like, yeah, if time allows, I'm all over it because it kind of puts you back to the basics. I'm so backed up, with people in really bad situations that it's like, I can't allow myself to go out and have fun investigating when my time is better served elsewhere. Yep. And I've chose to make it about the families, and that's what I do, and I'm happy with that. Busy, but I'm happy with that because that's the calling. You can't be good at something and not give back, and not pay it forward. You can't. I can't do it. I can't do it.
Have you ever had a situation or an encounter that scared the complete crap out of you and you just had to step back and just kind of collect yourself and go back in?
I guess. I'm pretty fearless. I mean, I not that I wouldn't jump if you came darting out from around a corner at me, I'd be like, heart, but get back in your chest,
Yeah.
But I really try to stay focused. I think the haunted forest in Romania was a bit of an eye opener for me personally, and my two team members that were with me, because we were out of our element for sure. But I mean, I researched it fairly well without getting into, like, I don't want to know everything about a location. when I go. I really want to try to have my own experience. We found out so much more about the location after the fact. And we had things happen that were just mind-blowing and fascinating. But we realized there's something here that it's just so far out there that it's okay. When the ghost box, says, "Go now, run," which I don't run ever, but I gracefully left the stage, shall we say. But when I look over, you have a skeptical guy sitting in there in the group, and he goes, "I don't think that should be happening." And the skeptical guy points out there's a tree line folding down onto itself. You're kind of going, and the box says, "Go now, run." You're kind of like, yeah, all right. Yeah. I think maybe we should be respectful.
Yeah.
And the thing follows you back to your hotel. And it's like, all right. And the whole time in my head, I'm going, acknowledgement is empowerment. Don't do it. The phones are going off the hook. And, and you just see, I just sitting there checking my emails going, don't acknowledge it. Don't even.
It's got to be difficult, though, not to acknowledge it.
It can definitely be difficult.
Yeah, just to say, you're really bugging me, go away.
Oh, yeah, I'm usually much like that. I'll get growled at and it'll be kind of like, well, I'm really sorry you're having a freaking bad day. But don't think you're going to give me a bad day.
I love that attitude.
That.
You growl back.
Oh my God, you hear me on some EVPs and it's just like, oh, baby's having a bad day. I'm sorry. Things like that. And I know, it's terrible. But, but it's just because I have taught myself not to give into the fear. I have to say, though, recently I helped a family and they sent me a recording, of all kinds of stuff. They're just videotaped, different things going on. And this thing, I must have got 30 clips and they all had something in them. Amazingly, it just blew my mind. But one of them in specific, I'm listening to it and I've got my headphones on. And it sounded colossal in size. I mean, it just sounded. I mean, it was so deep, and it had range, which says this thing sounds really big and old. It just sounded old, and it might have been because of the fact that it was speaking in what I think was Aramaic. I don't even think it was Latin. And it went on for a while, and my skin just tightened. I was like, oh, like every psychic sense in my body went, holy crap, this is big, and it's in that house. So I'm like, great. So can't wait, so I brought on my trusty remote viewer and I went, boy, we're going to have a good time tonight. And she's like, oh, like his nose, right? Oh, I'm like, I know you're excited and you can't hold back, but that's okay. So I work the poor girl. Believe me, I work her hard, but she's a trooper, and she goes in and does whatever I tell her to do in there. I'm like, this is what I need you to do. She goes, but I see it, and this is what it looks like. I know, it's all good. Like, okay, if you say so. So she's a champion, and second to none, and I always say it. And but I'll tell you something. It took us, oh God, an hour and 20 minutes to clear that property, whereas a normal clearing might take us 20 minutes.
Wow,
that's how much was there. And
is it because it was so old?
This thing was old, absolutely. They lived next door to a really bad property, also abandoned place, which all people would go into and do ceremonies. An old abandoned house, everybody goes there, animal sacrifices and such. It's quite sad, but they weren't that far away, and things have no boundaries. They're not bound by time or physical space. They just wander, and things. You have a lot of targets there. So it didn't take long, and it's still a location that many months later I still make a point of making sure that we check in on regularly, and we still pull things out of there because we even cleared the other property, but people just keep coming to it. So until that family decides to move, I don't stop, because it's not a one-shot deal.
No,
I really try to make sure that, we take care of the people that we help.
Yeah, so when I hear that some investigators go in and they only go in the one time and they don't follow up on the family, that really bothers me.
Oh, there are shows you see on television that shall remain nameless, but they're very much that, and it's very deceiving because people get the idea that the family has been helped or they've been helped, and they really haven't been. But again, it is what it is. It's tough when you don't have any creative control. Production has creative control. I've turned down my own series many times because of the fact that, I wouldn't be allowed to have input I don't expect to control the show by any means. That's not my thing. I'm not a producer, but I want to make sure that when I accept something that they will listen to me and say, we trust your opinion, like, we don't pretend to know what you do and vice versa. And it makes it more teamwork, and I've worked with amazing producers just like that. So for me, I don't abandon people. I've had people message me, honestly, 8-10 years later saying, we just want you to know we're okay still. Or we want you to know that something amped up, but you taught us. We remembered what you taught us and we got rid of it. Some people that I've helped have gone on to form their own paranormal groups. They've gone on to help other people based on a lot of what I've taught, and I know that even now, like, God, we clear between 40 and 60 a week. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, they're busy.
No kidding.
But a lot of them in those numbers are also what I call rechecks. Just going in and making sure, because where you can get rid of something, it's surprising how there's always something else waiting to take its place. So we keep rechecking until somebody says, we're okay. And even then, it'll be a while before I stop making a point of checking them, because I always have that little voice that says, you should check on these people. And sometimes I've had these people say, we're good now, you don't have to. And then I get like this message that says, you should check on these people. I'm like, really? All right. And I go in, and meanwhile, that person has an attachment again, and it turns you the other way. And I remove it. And then I get a message back saying, oh, hey, you guys are in here again. Thank you for not listening to me. She goes, I feel better. I'm like, all right. So it's just, we do it, and we take it very seriously, and we care about the people that we help. Even if somebody's doing it to themselves, playing around with things, and they get in trouble, and you're like, oh man, okay. We say, please refrain from doing this. Yeah. They don't. Then they call you again, and we just look at each other and go, really? What's it going to take? And I'm just like, apparently it's going to take another query. So we do it.
Or it's when you ask the client, have you dabbled in anything, Ouija board, whatever? No. And at the end of the investigation, well, there was at one time that we had some people over and we had the Ouija board. Oh, really? Okay.
Well, yeah, but people don't realize when you remote view, and I don't kid around. I say my viewer is second to none. She is fantastic and sees literally everything. So, no, I see this person sitting here at a board. I'm like, all right. And then when I push it, they'll go, oh, well, maybe I forgot about that time. Right. Need the info. Throw me a bone.
Yeah. Either they're afraid to admit it, or they're testing you to see if you're going to pick up on it.
Or maybe they're afraid that you won't help them if they figured that they brought it on themselves. Right.
True, yeah.
And I don't hold prejudices. It's like you're all entitled to your mistakes, some people just don't get it. Some people are so enthralled in the paranormal that they just can't seem to stay away from it. And then you get those people who are so gifted that things are drawn to them, and vice versa. But they just don't know how to properly ground or protect themselves from things happening to them. And once they learn that, then they can go ahead and enjoy the full-on experience, but they can do it safely.
Yeah. Or there's those two that they're so gifted, but they don't want to have anything to do with it.
Yes. And you know what? Those are the ones that you always struggle clearing. keep going back because they're just like, I don't know what it is. The things are just so extra drawn to them.
Yeah, maybe.
Okay, the closed sign is up on the door, people. What are you not seeing here? So, gosh, it's frustrating. So, yeah, but I don't know. It's definitely a journey, and it's a very rewarding journey. There really is nothing more rewarding than somebody finally saying to you, things feel good here. The kids can sleep at night. We're not scared anymore. Mm-hmm. I have hours and hours and hours and hours. I mean, and I'm not kidding when I say hundreds of hours of just, EVPs or sounds or, that people send me or that I've captured myself. Doing it 17 years, you get lots of stuff, right?
Yeah.
But it's still not as rewarding as knowing that child can sleep at night, mm-hmm. or that family feels safe, or those pets aren't being tormented, because people, you may not realize, but your pets can get attachments too.
Yeah.
We pulled attachments from pets. Heck, people don't realize that when you dabble in stuff and get attachments, if you don't get it taken care of, it could follow you into death. They want to destroy the physical, but they attach to the spirit. We have pulled attachments off of spirit people so they could ascend.
Wow.
Who knew? That was
I've
new
never
for me.
even heard of that. Wow. But I guess it makes sense.
I know. It was unbelievable. I remember getting a voice recording, or actually it was through a ghost box, and communicating with the spirit. And I'm like, I don't understand why you're not ascending. Your father's right there. And you hear the voice say, he won't let me. I'm going, who? And he goes, him behind me. And I went, oh, I see. Okay. I understand. And when we see a spirit in spirit form, in other cases are very aggressive, and then we can see all this dark in front of them, and I'm going, oh my God, it's like a dark mist, which is really how we started realizing, and we just started pulling these things off. And then you see somebody just completely calm down with no recollection of very much. And we just said, like, you ready to go home now? Thank you. All right, then off you go, and that's it. It's you don't realize that. And I mean, seriously, you want to make a pact, you want to sell out, you want to, something attaches onto you, or they attach it. These things take that very literally and very seriously into death. I know, it's crazy. It's crazy, but we've seen it. So
it's mind blowing.
It was for us, for sure. First time I'd seen it. And I thought to myself, how many did we miss? Yeah. And through the years, how many did I miss like this? Mm-hmm. So live and learn. You see, this is what I mean by like continuously educating yourself. Mm-hmm. Just never stop learning. Just pay attention. The signs are there. It's just, I think sometimes we're just not listening and we miss things. Mm-hmm. So that was an eye-opener and lesson learned.
The last question here, because we're almost at an hour already.
Woohoo!
I know. It just seems like a blink of an eye.
It does.
You deal with the more intense cases like we mentioned. Mm-hmm. What made you get into that?
Self-preservation. Kidding. I had an attachment. So, for like throughout my teen years, I did into my early 20s actually. And, I basically learned a lot trying to remove it and clear it from myself. And then I just thought it was a thing of the past for me. And I started, I was always intuitive and such, but I never looked beyond that. And, I, got married, had children, and I shut everything off because I really didn't want anything to do with it. I don't like the mix of children and the unknown. And the fact that my children were seeing things bothered me. And my daughter started seeing something not so kind. And I went, oh, okay, I'm dragged back in, and I'm not going to let this happen again. It's just not going to happen. So once they got older, I basically made the move into the field, so to speak, very gently. And I just realized I could do it. I say easily. I do find it. I don't find it hard. I don't know why I don't find it hard. Maybe it's my upbringing. Maybe because I was around that type of an energy for so many years that it doesn't startle me the same as it might startle somebody who's not used to it. I don't really have an answer. I just know that somewhere along the line, I was able to help people with it. And it was a work in progress. Believe me, there were some things that, you tweak it. It's like, okay, I'm going to work with people. I'm going to do this, or we're going to do investigations. And then those investigations, you realize things aren't really going away, and you have to work with the people, and together you make it go away. And it just seemed to take so long, and my waiting list just got longer and longer. And I realized at that point that you have to keep tweaking it until you find a way to be the most productive and to take away the tension and the situation from the people as quickly as possible, if possible, and I don't know. I fell into it, I guess. And, but when I say self-preservation, it was to keep my family safe, because I'd been through it and I never forgot. You'll never forget how that feels. It's almost like you're marked somehow. And I've heard other people say that who've had attachments. Do you feel marked? Because I feel like I'm marked. Things could just come back.
That too, yeah.
Yeah. Right?
Huh.
Yeah. And I believe it. And I think for the most part, it was to protect those that I love. And then it grew from there. And, to what it is now.
It's a calling.
I guess it is a calling, yeah. And you have to pay attention. You can't ignore it. They never let me ignore it. Every time I would try, things would just happen, and I'd be like, oh, okay, yep, nope, you're right, okay. Yeah, all right.
Yeah, fine.
And then here we are to the product of what you have today, which is moi.
Well, thank you so much for everything that you do for so many people. Thank you for being on the show.
You're welcome on both counts. But I really always like to stress that I am the one in the forefront, but I am not the only one that does the work. I have an amazing team. And like I said, I have an amazing viewer, which makes my part of it all very easy. And I'm only the face that you see. That's all. Right? Well, we're all part of good teams, and it's the team that puts it together.
Yep, for sure. But before we sign off, why don't you tell people where they can find you if they need to contact you? MichelleDesrochers.com is probably the easiest way through email, because my Facebook gets backed up. I get many 50 or 70 private messages a day, 800 notifications a day. That's just Facebook. Takes me a while to get back to people. Email is the easiest, which through MichelleDesrochers.com, you can email me there. Okay, and I'll be adding the link too in the show notes when this gets released.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much again, Michelle. You take care.
And you as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, bye-bye.
Well, we've made it to the end of another episode. Thanks so much for listening. Until next time, take care of each other. And if you'd like to be on the show or have questions and comments, just drop me an email, paranormalheart13@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you.
Paranormal Heart would like to extend a special thank you to PurplePlanet.com for supplying the music for the show. The views and opinions expressed on Paranormal Heart are those of the host and participants.